right, we're almost done, but not quite. It's been almost exactly 3 years since Street Fighter 6 was released in June 2023.
I really hope the leaks aren't true.
This is Street Fighter 6 Year 4.
If they show Vega first, then the leak might be true, but Vega is likely regardless.
Street Fighter 6 is already entering Year 4, but I can sense that we already have new challengers on the horizon.
This animation is strange. Yasmine's new, right? Who is that?
Wait to see if you're
Is Ingrid just messing with us? These don't look like... Okay, Bosch is just a World Tour character. They would not make him playable. He's literally wearing stuff that other characters wear.
Huh.
So he seemed like he's just a World Tour character.
Okay, I think that was...
Whoa. No, the leak was true. I'm gonna have to hear... I'm gonna have to put up with this. That roster is ass. That is the worst DLC lineup I've ever seen.
Oh, man.
I'm so upset. I'm so done with Street Fighter 6.
I thought you said Vega was gonna show up or something.
So there was a leak that said Tifa was going to be in the next season, and part of that same leak said Vega.
And today, we're announcing the special
I think it said Vega and Hagar and someone else in Tifa. And we only kept the worst part of that leak.
So who the heck is Arjun? And who the heck is Yasmine?
Arjun and Yasmine are new. Bosch is from World Tour. Tifa's obviously from Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
Dude, that's so annoying.
Man. Has been rebuilt as Tifa the Street Fighter. Materia has also been reimagined as a new gameplay system.
She's going to literally be doing magic stuff with Materia in Street Fighter.
We cannot show it today, but we adapted an iconic Final Fantasy
Yeah, that guy.
battle experience.
Virtua Fighter, save us.
We hope you all look
Virtua Fighter, please save me. Dude, a bunch... It's going to be so hard to actually get our critiques about this out without just getting strawmanned as, you know, oh, you just hate fun things. Oh, just let people have fun. You're just being, you know, you're just being a hater. Dude, it could have been any of the Street Fighter characters that people actually want. And this is the first time you do a crossover character with a non-fighting game character in Street Fighter. And it's Final Fantasy when they've been shoveling Final Fantasy characters to Tekken for the past 2 games.
Final announcement.
I'm still so upset. It's going to be hard to pay attention to this. Highguard 2 is now a single-player game. This is Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
You don't know how...
Last one.
You don't know how upset... Yeah, this will be part 3. You don't know how upset I am about... I don't know if... I can explain it if you want, if you're not fully understanding why Tifa is so upsetting in Street Fighter.
I know that she was in other games. I know that she was in other stuff.
Crossover stuff, you mean?
Yeah, other fighting games and stuff.
Not really, unless you count her guys. People have been whining for her to be in Tekken ever since Noctis. So when they put Noctis in Tekken 7, that pretty much opened up the possibility in people's minds that, oh, we can have Final Fantasy characters in Tekken now, right? And Noctis was kind of a stupid pick because Noctis uses a sword, right?
Yeah.
And then the Final Fantasy VII remake comes out shortly after Final Fantasy 15, and Tifa is actually a pugilist type character, right? She actually punches and kicks. So then people were thinking, how come we got Noctis in Tekken instead of a character that actually punches like Tifa?
People, yeah.
So then they were thinking, okay, Tifa in Tekken 8 though, right? Tifa in Tekken 8 though. And plus, when Tekken 8 came out, you know, this was after 2 of these Final Fantasy VII remakes had already released, right? So then it seemed even more likely, okay, if we get another Final Fantasy character, it would have to be Tifa this time because Final Fantasy VII is a lot more relevant now than it was when Noctis got added to Tekken 7. But then, psych, it's another sword wielder Final Fantasy character. It's Clive from FF16. So then people kind of gave up hope with that. But they kept on complaining, saying, oh, we still want Tifa in a fighting game. And I'm not against the idea of putting her into a fighting game in general, but Street Fighter, it's not a crossover game, right?
Yeah.
Already putting
a lot of cool characters that they can pull from.
Already putting Terry and Mai in the game was pushing it, right? Because Street Fighter's never had a crossover character before. You save the crossovers for their versus games. You know, that's why we have Capcom versus Tatsunoko, Capcom versus Marvel, you know, because this is where we just let things cross over. But if there's no fighting game that stays its own thing without crossovers, then there's no point in having crossovers ever, if everything's already a crossover. You know what I mean? And so Terry and Mai was kind of pushing it because you know, Capcom and SNK have crossed. We had Capcom versus SNK, right? Don't put Terry and Mai in Street Fighter. Save it for Capcom versus SNK 3. You know what I mean? Yeah. So when you put Terry and Mai in Street Fighter, it makes it less likely that we'll get a CVS 3 because they'll say you already got CVS 3 sort of by playing Terry and Mai in Street Fighter. But I don't just want to play as Terry and Mai. I want to play as a bunch of SNK characters with Capcom characters, not just those 2. So I think it's definitely a reflection of the state of the industry that these companies don't like having multiple different fighting games anymore. A single company doesn't want to have multiple fighting games. They just pretty much want to put all their eggs in one basket. And so they use Street Fighter to get their crossovers instead of an actual crossover game, which really upsets me.
Yeah.
Because imagine if we actually got a Capcom versus Square, you know, the game I'm literally animating for right now.
Yeah.
Not just Tifa, but a bunch of Square Enix characters.
Yeah.
That would be so cool. So I'm not against the idea of Square characters fighting Street Fighter characters before anybody tries to strawman me. Literally animating for a game called Capcom versus Square. So I obviously...
There's no any other Capcom characters other than Leon and Final Fantasy VII guys. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And Street Fighter has a lot of cool characters they can pull from that I'm sure they haven't put in.
I know, it's a ton.
Yeah. It feels like they're shamed.
And yeah, it's the opportunity. It's the opportunity cost, right? If you could just materialize things out of thin air and just snap and have Tifa appear, it wouldn't be an issue. But the fact that she's in the game means that it's preventing an actual Street Fighter character from being in, you know? That could have been Makoto. Could have been Q. It could have been any Street Fighter 3 character that people have been wanting.
Yeah.
I think we just kind of need to dive right in. What do you say? Let's do it. Take it away, Matt. I don't mind if I do.
As we reunite with our heroes, the meteor is in the skies above. A constant reminder of your mission.
Well, yeah, this game to look forward to.
Might upload that rant just so I can point people in the direction of the video whenever I get asked about it, so I don't have to explain every time because it'll get tiring. I'm going to have to go back and complain about the Street Fighter roster.
Go for it.
Not just Tifa, but Bosch is such a nothing burger character because he's just made to be your... Okay, so in World Tour, you make an avatar, right? And it's kind of like an RPG, and you can go around and meet actual Street Fighter characters and learn moves from them, right?
Yeah.
Do you know this? Bosch is the rival character to your avatar, kind of like a Pokemon rival.
Oh, okay, so like to learn crap with them.
Yeah. So he's not really made to be a playable character.
Well, that can be cool, I guess.
If they do some crazy cool stuff with his moves, I'm willing to have my mind changed, but that is just the impression from seeing him in World Tour. He seemed like just a character that was supposed to only exist in that. And for that purpose, he was an okay character because it's cool having kind of like a Pokemon style rival in a fighting game RPG. But when you take him and put him in the actual multiplayer, that's when it seems weird because it seems so obvious that he was only made in this scope to just be a rival character.
There you have it. Final Fantasy VII Revelation coming to all platforms next spring.
Dude, the other two characters look so generic.
Really a celebration of games across all
Not Bosch and Tifa, but the Arjun and Yasmine or whatever. They look so generic.
Great job coaching.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like the Sony one where there's a lot of good stuff, and then really didn't end too strong, you know. So that's okay.
That's right. Tons of
Well, the Street Fighter thing's upsetting, but it's not bad for the same reason as God of War.
streaming live on Tuesday, August.
It's not, oh no, they're wasting an entirely new game. They're wasting all these resources to make an entire game that nobody wants. It's just a season of DLC, but... And I already know that FF7 Part 3 is a thing, so it's not upsetting to see it because I already... You know, I'm already aware of that.
It's nothing new there, Well...
Reviews like this, you gotta get out.
Let me look up...
I gotta go somewhere, so...
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll complain about this by myself then.
I'll hide.
Yeah, thanks for watching. Okay, we got Virtua Fighter though, and we got Gundam, both in the same presentation. So
I actually really enjoyed like 70% of them, I'd say, you know. So
I know, and I'm glad the Virtua Fighter thing wasn't just the leaked footage; it was actually new.
Yeah, that was good. Well, all right. What's next? Xbox or Nintendo?
Xbox. Nintendo hasn't announced theirs yet.
Dang. All right. We'll see then.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm out here.
Okay.
All right.
Later.
See you later. Bye-bye.
You're willing to say all these new goobers might be cool as hell? Based on their appearance, they don't look like they would be. Like I said, I'm willing to have my mind changed, but a fighting game character should immediately inspire you when you look at them, right? So the fact that they look boring is a negative, whether they have a cool moveset or not. Yeah, it's super tone deaf. That's what I said, Makoto, you know? If you could just materialize somebody into the game, I would have no problem with Tifa, right? Or anybody. You could put anybody in if you could just snap your fingers, but there's always opportunity cost with all of this stuff, especially with how expensive it is, with how expensive and time-consuming it is to make a fighting game character now in modern day, right? Street Fighter 6 character takes a lot longer to make than fighting game characters from a few years ago because there's so much work that goes into them. So Tifa being in the game means that we might not be getting Makoto when we otherwise would, or Dudley, or Sakura, or literally anybody. Yeah, and again, it's not just Tifa I'm complaining about, because the other three characters aren't anybody that people were asking for either.
Street Fighter 6 is already entering year 4.
Dude, I'll show you what I mean. He's wearing Chun-Li's bangle. He looks like an Avatar character because he's the rival to your Avatar in World Tour. That's the impression I always got, right? I never finished World Tour, but it seemed very apparent that he was kind of just wearing a hodgepodge of stuff because he was supposed to be a second Avatar in a way. Just kind of wearing whatever.
New challengers on the horizon.
I don't want to play as an Avatar type character in multiplayer. That's what the Avatar battle stuff is for. I think that the reason this looks weird is because I think she's animating at a different frame rate than the background. So I don't think this is a bad character design in general. If this were for an anime or something, I would say she looks really cool. But as a fighting game character, I don't think it's a good design because fighting game character design philosophy is different than just character design philosophy in general, right? Because with fighting game character design philosophy, you're supposed to immediately be able to tell what kind of moves they have when you look at them, right? When I look at her, it could be anything. I'm not noticing any specific martial art based on the clothing or anything. Maybe there's a way to divine it, but I'm not able to. And I consider myself at least moderately well educated when it comes to martial arts stuff, more than the average person at least. She's holding some kind of... It's not an actual knife. I think it's some kind of talon. It looks as if it might be some kind of animal talon, but she's holding it like a karambit, right? So I guess it's a karambit knife fighting style, kind of like Smoke in MK1. I really don't want to have knife wielders in Street Fighter, though. Just a terrible trailer, too. Well, like I said, if this were a trailer for an anime, I would think this looks really cool. This would look like something I'd want to watch. But this is just not a fighting game character design. Not only is it lacking any kind of visual communication with what kind of fighting style she has, but the color theory, I have no idea what the color palette is supposed to be communicating either, because, you know, sometimes you can tell if a character is a cryomancer or somebody that shoots fire based on the colors they're wearing, you know. But this doesn't tell me anything. And dude, this is literally just... This is just a guy. This could be an alternate costume for Ryu, almost. This guy has the same exact build as Street Fighter 6 Ryu. And he's even wearing white pants, and he even has a sash like Ryu. And he even has a beard like Ryu, with dark hair. It just looks like Ryu who grew his hair out some. Yeah, I think this might be Dawson's. His name is Arjun, right? So I think he's supposed to be Indian. So, I mean, obviously I know there's a difference between India and Japan, but I'm just saying from a character archetype standpoint, at a glance, when you look at him, if you're squinting your eyes, you might mistake him as Ryu. Because it's just a dude wearing white pants with a beard. Just a martial artist looking guy. And again, there's nothing on his clothes that would communicate to me what kind of fighting style he is. He looks like the Shoto of a different fighting game. He looks like another fighting game's ripoff of Ryu, right? Like Kairi in Fighting EX Layer, you know? You know when you come into a Shoto that is obviously supposed to be just a Shoto, not some kind of weird interesting take on a Shoto, but just a Shoto like Kairi from Fighting EX Layer. He looks like another fighting game's version of Ryu. It doesn't seem as if he should exist in the same game as Ryu, because why would you need both of these guys when they both look as if they're fulfilling the exact same archetype? Even more like a hobo. Yeah, you know, like a hobo Shoto. Hobo main character martial artist. It's not a bad character design, it's just so redundant when Ryu's already in the game. Again, if this were an anime trailer, I think this looks cool. I guess he's breathing fire a little bit like Dalsum. Okay. And then you already heard my thoughts on Bosch. Maybe it's a little different now, especially in this trailer, but in the game, when you're playing World Tour, I remember looking at his bangle and thinking that looks just like Chun-Li's. What fighting style would Bosch even have? I wouldn't know. Like I said, I didn't play much of World Tour. I stopped once it started getting super grindy. I was hoping for World Tour to actually get challenging, but instead of the AI actually becoming more challenging, it just gets grindier because the AI stays incredibly stupid, but they become incredibly tanky. Which is weird because the AI in Street Fighter 6 is actually really good if you go to Versus and just fight a CPU opponent. If you fight a level 8 CPU, it's actually fun. So I was thinking, oh, this will be really fun to fight CPUs like this in World Tour, but they never get as challenging as that. In World Tour, they stay at like level 1 or 2 CPU difficulty instead of scaling up to 8. That's a different topic, though. I'm not necessarily trying to complain about World Tour right now, but it's hard not to talk about World Tour when talking about Bosch, right? So my question is, what fighting style does he actually have? Where is he actually from? Tibet? Because I always thought his clothing reminded me of Keelik from Soul Calibur. But Keelik has a staff, you know? Keelik has a staff to fight with to differentiate himself from the other Soul Calibur characters. So what would Bosch do? It looks like a style of Kung Fu. His fighting style is scuttling.
Fascinating.
Skipping Tifa. Okay, so Arjun does look a little bit more interesting here because he looks as if he just inhaled a bunch of air and is swollen up like a balloon, right? Little bit of a Dalsim thing. But again, that's another redundancy because Dalsim can already do that. Dalsim can already breathe fire, so why do we need another guy to do that? But that does give him a little bit of uniqueness that we didn't see in the animated part. Yeah, that's definitely like a Karambit. See, Yasmine even has the ring that she's putting the finger through here. And I was right in saying it's not a blade. It looks as if it's more of a talon that has an engraving on the side. He loves to suck. We'll see. Imagine he plays like Capcom Karnov. That could be cool. I was thinking it also kind of reminds me of Mahurl from Breakers. Even though I know that's not... Mahurl's not from the same place, but just the archetype of being able to sort of inhale a bunch of air and get big from that. Sheesh, dude. This looks like a fake leak. Arjun doesn't even look as if he's in the same art style as Yasmine or Tifa. Yasmine and Tifa look as if they have the same art style. Bosch is slightly off, but can kind of pass with them. But then Arjun looks way less anime than these three. And I don't just mean the proportions, I mean how the colors are actually rendered. Sheesh, dude. I was scared of the leak coming true, and then the leak wasn't true, but it wasn't true in the worst way possible, because the one reason I didn't like the leak was because of the Tifa inclusion, you know? Who were the other characters in the leak? Vega and Hagar and someone else, right? Vega and first of all, it's dumb that Vega isn't already in the game at launch. Vega should have been in the game instead of Lily. And Hagar obviously would be super cool, even though he's a Final Fight character. Final Fight character is only sort of a crossover character just based on, you know, all the other Final Fight characters that have gotten added so far. It was Vega, Hagar, Gouken, and Tifa. Yeah, dude, Vega, Hagar, and Gouken. I know a lot of people would be complaining about no Street Fighter 3 characters still. But regardless, even without Street Fighter 3 characters, Vega, Hagar, and Gouken would still be cool. And we only kept the worst part of that leak with Tifa. And then the three characters that would have actually been cool, Vega, Hagar, Gouken, got replaced with these bums. I know I'm probably going to be in a minority here and people are going to strawman me as some hater, but I'm really hoping that there's at least some significant percentage of other people out there that understand what I'm saying and share a similar sentiment. Oh, sheesh. I don't know if there's anything else I should say here. I don't really want to beat a dead horse. I don't want to be overly negative. I just want to get all my thoughts out now so I can upload a video so I can point people in the direction so I don't have to keep repeating myself later.